And that's where Johnny Torrio's idea of setting up the syndicate was established. Al Capone was there, Moses Annenberg was there, Torrio was there, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, a couple other people. Can't think of everybody was there, but I'll put that up for you. You want to talk for a minute while I find that, or do you want to just keep on going?
Well, yeah, no, let's get it all laid out. And I know there's, definitely. Please keep going. Right. It's important to have the timeline so, you know, people can put the piece of the puzzle together.
Right.
I mean, you know, people I think were under the impression, they took out took down Al Capone, there's no more mob, and you know the mob is Italian and it doesn't exist, it's only in the movies. So yeah, it's definitely important to hear the timeline.
Right. Actually, the syndicate meeting was 1927. I just put it up there. First, I'm going for the Dope Inc. thing. Let's see, where were we? In the first years of Prohibition, Eichel Bronfman and his 4 boys ran all the bootlegging from the prairie states of Canada through the distribution sites like in the South, like Chicago. To secure shipment lines, Harry Bronfman set up a dummy from Trans-Canadian Transport Company, which was a protected cover for the Canadian Pacific Railway owned by a respectable gentleman back in London, which ran the whiskey across the border. So the Bronfmans also bought up stretches of barren farmland along the border, and even built an underground pipeline so they're chicken knock. So they could basically set up a pipeline and pour the stuff into the pipe and have it come out in the U.S. In 1922, Bronfman's brother-in-law, Paul Matloff, was executed gangland style in a dispute over profit sharing. Let's see what else here. The scandal ensued. Public hearings. The Bronfman crime families. Public hearings were convened in 1922. The Bronfman crime family spilling came out, and the bloodshed came out in the light of day. The Bronfmans received a mild reprimand and relocated their operations to Montreal. Okay, so in 1922 they moved to Montreal.
Okay.
In the year 22, they also marked the point that Bronfmans procured and owned their own distillery, which we know became Seagram's. The Bronfmans imported British whiskey from the Distillery Company of London, and brewer whiskey. I won't go through this. I'm just not going to talk about all this. Let's see. And they talk. Okay, here we go. The rights to whiskey ownership was made by His Majesty the King in 1926. Upon the request of Samuel Bronfman, the Distillery Company of London agreed to go 50-50 in a Bronfman distillery. The Distillery Company Limited was formed as a holding company with the Bronfmans and Seagram's distillers. Headquarters were established at the Bronfmans corporate castle in Montreal, but it was the Distillery Company of London. William Ross was installed as president, with Stan Bronfman as vice president. The British elite had given a green light to the Bronfmans. So the sad thing about that, it's indicating that British royalty was directly involved with the Bronfmans in organized crime activities that have harmed our nation. This is really sad. This is what it's indicating. Okay?
Yeah.
Despite the big infusion of capital, the legitimacy they gained from the link up with the British Distillery Company of London afforded the Bronfmans the smell of smuggling and bribery grew too strong. So even though they became legitimate, they still came back to their old roots of, drug smuggling and bribery and bootlegging. In 28, the Royal Commission of Customs of Canada recommended immediate prosecution of Harry Bronfman on charges of attempted bribery Shortly after, the Bronfmans created the Atlas Shipping Company, moved the smuggling operations to the French islands of St. Pierre, off of Newfoundland. And they had licenses in Bermuda, St. John, New Brunswick, and the British Honduras. The Atlantic So they basically got involved with the Atlantic Shipping Company. Oh, another company they own, we've heard it as Royal Caribbean Cruises. That's another one owned by the Bronfmans. Okay. The Atlas Shipping Company was one of the first ties that nailed down the dirty drug money laundering underground railway between Canada and the Caribbean. And they had a little song that they created for there. It says, 4 and 20 Yanks, feeling very dry, went across the border to get a drink of rye. When the rye was open, the Yanks began to sing, God bless America, but God save our king.
Wow.
Organized crime comes of age. With Prohibition came the big-time business. It was no longer a small-scale operation, loan sharking, petty prosecution, protection rackets. Now it's centralized around marketing of one precious outlawed commodity, whose supply was controlled from London, from the British colony of Canada. Crime was reorganized from the top to the bottom in an integrated wholesale retail distribution. Hundreds of movies stewed out of Hollywood about the Roaring '20s, glamorizing the truth. With Prohibition, the British, through its Bronfman crime family cutout, had created a nationally syndicated crime cancer. With the decade of the Roaring '20s, the Bronfman syndicate would be peddling heroin, cocaine, and other poisonous drugs through the same wholesale and transport system they used for bootlegging. Bronfman's counterpart in the United States was Arnold Rothstein. Just as Bronfman made it big time under the auspices of the Hoover-Juden elite, Arnie Rothstein was sponsored by our crown Zionist investment banks who arrived in New York as the Montefiore's were setting up business in Canada. Arnold Rothstein, the godfather of organized crime, was the son of a wealthy art crowd dry goods merchant. He was also he was closely aligned and working with the Bronfmans from day one. At the turn of the century, the Russell Sage Foundation issued a well-published field on loan sharking in New York and talked about how it resulted in bankrupting people, jailing, and taken over by petty gangsters, by Rothstein, who emerged as a powerful figure in the Tammany Hall with the fabled loan sharking business established at millions of dollars. Region-wide, combines were formed up and down the East Coast. The Reinfeld Syndicate was named after Newark, New Jersey bootlegger accused of murdering Joseph Reinfeld as the middleman between the British distribution and the rum roads of Boston and New York. Its controlling shareholders were the four Bronfman brothers, Alan, Sam, Abe, and Harry. The U.S. leg was handled by Reinfeld and Abe Billwing, later the boss of Atlantic City. The mob boss of Atlantic City was a Bronfman, Swede. Okay. And that's where they set up the and then they talk about here in 1927, the Big Seven combined, consolidated the entire East Coast distribution. Its organizer, this is where it gets interesting, was Johnny Torrio, a dapper little gentleman who, without the benefit of family rackets or turf, had gained notoriety for eliminating any local crime bosses who stood in the way of national syndication. Torrio was a Bronfman man who had murdered his own uncle to prove it, brought it into Chicago in 1910 by his uncle, racketeer Jim Colosimo. Torrio sniffed the wind on the eve of Prohibition and demanded that his uncle start making the right contacts to get into the lucrative business of bootlegging. When Big Jim refused, Torrio had him murdered, took over Chicago mob as the distribution point for the Bronfman liquor. Torrio was the sponsor, by the way, of Al Capone. Al Capone was his understudy, as was Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano. 27, Torrio left Chicago, headed for Havana, then to Italy, returned to the U.S. In 1927, so we left 25 to 27.